A few years after the Bank of Jacksonville went out of business, the Jacksonville Club moved into the very same location. And by the time Grace Nobel took over and was talking with her daughter Betty, the club was renamed the Jacksonville Tavern. It went something like this.
I still can't believe that I've inherited the Jayville Tavern. I mean, what am I going to do with the saloon?
I don't know, Mama, but you did help Mr. Hartman make it successful. There is a certain irony considering you lost your favorite job because you worked here. But you don't have to decide now.
True.
So let's introduce ourselves. I am Betty Hamaker Hoskins, and this is my mother, Grace Moody Hamaker Nobel. I'm sure our guests would like to hear more, so perhaps you should start from the beginning.
Well, I was working as a cook out at Camp White during the Second World War, taking care of those poor service boys, when Mr. Hartman offered me a job right here. Well, I gladly took it, so I wouldn't have to travel so far.
After Mr. Hartman hired my mother on as manager and cook, all the Camp White servicemen started coming to the Jayville Tavern. Mama needed extra help, so I also worked here for a while. In fact, I met my husband through one of Mama's boys.
And I really didn't want Betty working. She'd been so sick as a child, and she was still frail.
Mama, you didn't need to worry about me. I learned my strong survival skills from you. My mother overcame so many obstacles in her life. Can you believe her own mother gave her away to a passing riverboat captain when she was only 2 years old? And then he traded her to a local Indian tribe for 40 mules.
Now, Betty, my mother was little more than a child herself. She'd been orphaned when she was 10, married off when she was 14, and I came along shortly thereafter. She didn't know how to take care of herself, much less a child. And when my father came home, the Indians gave me back to him. They considered him a friend because he had nursed so many of them through a smallpox epidemic. But then, with Mother gone, he realized he couldn't care for me either, so he took me down to California to his mother. Granny was good to me, but I felt both motherless and fatherless.
But Mama was always the kind of person who could take care of herself. After high school, she went to business college, and then she was hired as a court reporter.
Oh, and I was good and I was fast. But then the judge discharged me. He said a rowdy courtroom with raunchy language was not the place for a proper young lady. Wouldn't he be surprised to know that this lady not only worked in a saloon, but now owns one?
I'm sure, but then I'm sure he had no idea the lengths you would go to take care of yourself and your family.
Oh, my husband John Hamaker and I had 4 wonderful children and an enviable life in California with a huge farmhouse, 3 farms, and acres of orchards.
But then I came down with polio when I was 10.
Oh, the doctors didn't think Betty would make it. The polio had affected her lungs, and this was before the iron lung machine. They said her only chance was to massage her chest to get air into her lungs. So I did, day and night. I was determined I was not going to lose her.
I live and breathe today because my mother never gave up on me. But then we lost everything else in the Depression. That's when we moved to Jacksonville. It was a cold December in 1932 with the temperatures below 0. We moved into a small house on South 3rd Street with no indoor plumbing. Mama said, "What do you want for Christmas? New plumbing or Christmas presents?" We all voted for new plumbing.
Good choice. Well, anyway, things started looking up. John was able to open Hamaker's Market in what's now the wine tasting room of the Jacksonville Inn, and he ran it for several years. But then John's health started failing. He had always had stomach problems, but it got so bad he had to close the store.
Papa was soon bedridden, and when he was only 50 years old, he passed away in 1942.
Oh, the bills we had? That's when I went to work at Camp White. I was like a mother to those young servicemen. They were far from home and had no idea what the future held.
That's why they followed you to the Jayville Tavern whenever they had leave. I remember you called them your camp whiters.
True. Such brave, good boys. But after John died, I was lonely.
So when Jim Noble came calling, I married him. He's good company and a charming Irishman. A little too Irish at times. If I were to keep the tavern, he would be spending all of his time right here. And he and work are generally not on speaking terms.
So I'm still the breadwinner. But anyway, I enjoyed my camp whiters, but it was hard work here in the bar. But then my dream job came along. Caretaker for the new Jacksonville Museum in the old U.S. Hotel.
For 2 years, I looked after the collection, learning the history of every item and getting new donations. But then, when they moved the museum to the old courthouse, do you know they didn't even consider me for the job of curator? I was so disappointed.
Well, it's their loss.
I think the selection committee never got over your working in a tavern.
I did what I had to do for my family. And now, well, I suppose I can sell this place, and I won't have to struggle anymore.
And I would have more time for volunteering. Oh, and to work with the garden club. Oh, they love my begonias.
Mama raises prize-winning begonias. You know how I've always liked wordplay? Begonia. Reminds me it's time for our guest to be going.
Oh.
Thank you so much for coming by for a visit.
Good evening. See, and there's so many of them to a smallpox epidemic. But then, with Mother gone,